I'll Barbara shut the door when she comes in.
Okay,
I think we're close enough.
can you see yourself on the screen?
Okay, we're waiting for Barbara, she'll be right back in a
Yeah.
second. Everybody have their packages?
Yep.
Okay,
Desirable.
Huh.
Oh, nice.
oh, thank you. I hope you feel that way after we go through every single word. Okay,
And we're gonna be through by 12.
by 12, hard stop. We did it
Hard
last time, we're gonna do it
Good.
forever. Hard stop and
Good.
help me if I slide.
It's
Yeah, give me my warning.
You're welcome.
Will you shut that door, Barbara, please?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
I certainly shall, Ollie.
Okay,
When John comes, let him try it.
Ferme la porte.
okay, let's convene the meeting. And someone just reminded me that we tried the hard stop at 12 last time, we're gonna do it again
That would
going
be
forward.
nice.
Yeah, we'll be out of here at 12 no matter what. Let's look at the agenda for a minute. Obviously the normal stuff. The next meeting has been rescheduled though, because I'm going home for a while.
Oh, good.
But
Entitled.
You're
thank you.
entitled.
When will it be?
Send my regards.
Oh, thank you,
When will
yes.
it be?
Uh,
The next meeting?
To be
June
determined.
28th at 10 a.m.
What, when,
I
June
won't
who?
be here.
June 28th, Thursday.
June 28th.
I won't be here. I have a
Okay.
graduation.
Oh, that's right.
did you say?
Thursday, June
June
28th,
28th.
At 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
One in the end of May, one in the end of June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get started. I haven't been reading the minutes, but I'm going to today. We covered an amazing amount of ground last time, so I wanna make sure that we kind of have that framework to finish up what we have to do. Okay, chair convened at 10 a.m., setting a 2-hour limit to the meeting, unless a compelling issue required a few more minutes to resolve. That didn't happen, fortunately. I welcome Louise to the committee. Minutes from the March 13 meeting were read and approved. Okay, here, we went over the stuff from Rod Tennyson. And here's the final language that he came up with and we came up with going back and forth. That's the interim officer, remember that issue? And Rod is calling it a leave of absence. And the language is, should an officer voluntarily request a leave of absence from his or her duties, or should an officer be unable to perform his or her duties for a period of 3 months or more for reasons deemed appropriate by the officers committee, including medical necessity or family emergency, then the officers committee shall propose to the executive board and then to the delegate assembly for approval a replacement to serve for the unexpired term of the absent officer or until such time as the absent officer returns, resigns, or is determined to be unable to return. Unless his or her term has expired, a returning officer from
Medical.
any medical leave of absence is required to show medical certification of readiness to resume the duties of the office and submit same to the delegate assembly for approval.
I think they
Are we
take the
comfortable
prize
with
of
all
the
this?
longest sentence.
What?
I think they take the prize of the longest sentence.
Yes, I know, that is, no, he's got another one coming
Oh,
up.
really?
Yes,
Can I
okay,
ask a question?
yeah,
To the delegate assembly for approval, if they wanna have a medical certification?
Nope.
Or shouldn't it just be the offices?
that's what I thought, but this is what he sent back.
Well, I think,
We can make changes if we wanted to.
who or why would anyone be approving or not approving a medical certification? We have doctors on the board now.
Yeah, that's true, that's,
Medical
yeah,
certification of fitness for duty, that,
Right.
it is what it is.
yeah,
Well, you would get that from your doctor.
Right.
Yeah, it says that,
And
but-
just,
My
I think
question
that's
is
a good
what it
point.
says.
I think it just means you're gonna see it, not you're gonna
Yes,
prove
that's
it,
it.
they're gonna
Alright.
bring the
Now,
documentation
that's-
for you to
Yeah,
see.
hold on a second, remember, we're gonna go back to our rule of one at a time. Remember this was Rod's language, we can adapt it, we can change it, but I didn't wanna change it for the purposes of going over it now first, yes.
My question is, why do you need the delegate assembly to do it? Why not just
You
your
don't.
officers?
You
It's a
don't
very
need
simple
anybody.
thing.
And that's right.
You're complicating things.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's a very good point.
Then why can't we
Barbara,
remove
you
it?
had a question?
No, she just said it.
Yeah, exactly,
I think we just ended to resume the duties
Right.
of the office,
right.
period.
Period.
Now, should it be, is required to present or to show medical, or,
It says that.
No,
to whom? It doesn't say to whom,
Should be the office.
to the officers, right.
Okay.
this isn't school that they have to bring a note from the doctor,
I
go back
know.
to class.
But that's a liability, that's why it's an insurance issue, to tell you the
Yes,
truth, that's
right.
why they have to bring in the medical.
That's right, right.
So you're crossing out and submit saying to the delegate assembly.
Yeah, that's gone,
Submit to
So where,
officers.
what are we doing?
To officers.
Period after office.
to the office, yeah, to
The officers committee?
To resume, the duties of the office, yes. Show medical certification of readiness
To the officers.
to resume the duties of the office to the
Period.
officers committee, yeah.
For the officers committee.
Or it can be in front, we'll see how it reads when we're done. Okay, conflict of interest. This is a tough one. It's good, it's accurate, it's legal, but the language is still convoluted. Remember that we had submitted some fairly simple language. He came back with one version, we sent it back and said, please simplify it. This is the simplification, so I'm gonna read it. And you'll notice there is, where is, oh yes, at the bottom of the page, there is a phrase that says sufficient for the purpose or approval without counting the votes of or consents of such interested UCO delegate. It's the only place in the language that gives me the idea that anyone with a conflict of interest cannot vote. I searched for it, it's hard to figure out, but let's see if it's clear to you. All right, no contract or other transaction between UCO and one or more of its delegates or between any other business entity in which one or more of the business entity's directors are UCO officers, delegates, or who are financially interested in that business entity shall be either void or voidable because of such relationship or interest. When such interested UCO delegates are present at the meeting of the delegate assembly where it was approved, or are present at a UCO committee thereof, which authorizes, approves, or ratifies such contract or transaction, or because the UCO delegate votes are counted for approval. Barbara?
The UCO delegates, I mean, if you had all those delegates there, okay? And it's a minor issue of what they know someone or something, that's one vote out of 200, let's say, okay? At a committee, I can see it at a bid committee, different committees. But delegate assembly, you think you're gonna be able to enforce that?
No.
I don't think so.
I agree, I wanted to bring that up, because it maybe ought to be only committees.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a question, what about paid employees?
what about them?
They have can they have a conflict of interest? Can they do business with, I don't know of anybody in particular,
Well,
I'm
they
just
should,
raising the
they
issue.
can't vote, they can't vote.
They
have
don't
no
have a
votes.
vote,
But can they have a contact with the vendor, for example?
yes.
Yeah.
But they don't
there's
vote.
nothing in the law that says they can't, but they have to disclose their relationship
And not vote?
and not vote.
Well, your two employees, I mean, to be very honest, which is Donald and Rhoda, neither one of them have a voting right on a committee.
Right.
And that's all I can tell
And
you.
they don't have
You know,
financial interest in
and
any
if
of
they
the
have,
company.
Right.
if Donald brought, hypothetically, just to solve your, your mind. He brought something to, say, the bid committee with a company, He would have to, if he has any affiliation with them that we should know about, he would have to let us know.
I wasn't talking about anybody in particular. When we
Well, no,
do
I'm just
these, we
using
hope
them-
it's long-term. We hope what we do now will be around for a while.
Right, for paid employees.
Right.
But they don't, none of our paid employees are allowed to vote for anything, are they?
No, they don't have a vote on any committee.
No,
The
the
only
reason,
one
go
that
ahead.
really strikes me as a potential for a problem is Donald.
Donald, cause he's a
Donald
resident.
is dealing with these vendors all the time.
Right,
Does he have a financial interest? I would hope
Not.
sincerely not, that he doesn't own stock in any of these companies. I mean, Rod told me when I became cable chair, because out of an abundance of caution, I told Rod I had a big deal, 100 shares of Comcast stock. He said, for a CYA purposes, sell it.
yeah, yeah,
Right, because I was negotiating a
Yeah, with
multi-million-dollar cable contract and Comcast was a vendor. And so Donald.
It's different because he's a CAM and our resident.
Right.
right, yeah,
He deals with Seacrest with his building.
I know all
time.
those things.
Right.
As I said, I'm not talking about anybody in particular. Think about it in long range.
Yeah, go ahead.
3 years from now, we might have somebody, a paid employee, and when we hire them, we don't know. With Donald, we know because he lives in the village. He's lived here for years.
But they just, no paid employee can vote, that I know.
right.
Well, I don't know if that's in the bylaws. I mean, that.
It isn't
we haven't-
actually,
We
It
have
isn't.
adopted that as policy. It probably should go in the bylaw.
yeah,
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 I think it should.
it should be.
To
in the
cover
bylaws,
ourselves, there should be
absolutely.
something in here.
Right.
okay. Yeah, okay.
But I
It was
just
brought up at one point, and then I'll come to you, Jackie. It was brought up originally because we were worried about WPRF. Remember that? Remember, we were concerned that there were people who worked for WPRF who were residents of the village and who might have wanted to be on committees. And that's what triggered this whole thing, although we don't mention WPRF specifically. And I think all it says is no contract will be void because someone has a financial interest or any other thing. But then it goes on to say, provided such contract, if the fact of such relationship or interest is disclosed or known to the UCO Delegate Assembly or UCO Committee, which authorizes, approves, or ratifies the contract or transaction by a vote or consent sufficient for the purpose of or approval without counting the votes or consents of such interested committee member, I guess it would say. It's very convoluted.
Legalese
The
and
wording
spades.
is terrible.
It's what,
It's legalese and spades.
we can go back to what we said and ask him one more time to look at
I
it.
can't believe that can't be boiled down.
Yeah, well, I thought we had, and he just sent this. And this looks like something
We don't
right out
have-
of the law, that he, you know,
We don't have to follow every word that he
that's right,
says, so
so I
long
think,
as
good.
the intent is the same.
Jackie and then Louise.
You know, many years ago, we have an emergency here. And let's say a hurricane and somebody on the border, an officer knows one company and we can't find other companies. This happened many years ago. You're really not gonna know if there's a hurricane, our roofs are off, so one of the officers finds a roofing company. You're really not gonna know, maybe we're just spinning our wheels, because you're not gonna know if the person who finds the roofing company and can't find others has a vested interest.
Yeah,
So maybe we're spinning our wheels.
Asking you hope
There's
nobody
nothing
has.
here about an emergency, but in an emergency, somebody might have a vested interest.
right,
Or we don't know if
right.
they might have a vested
Yeah, it's
interest.
a good point.
So maybe we're just, because, or maybe it happened years ago, I don't know.
Well, it has to be stated It has to be said
So,
that that's improper, right?
Yeah.
And if people break it, then they
It's
break it,
unethical.
whether it's for an emergency or
You know what I
whatever, they
mean.
still break it. I'm
You
gonna
know
go
what I
with
mean.
Liz first and then David.
I think we could possibly simplify this simply by saying if anyone has a financial interest in any company that is being brought up for bids with UCO, they shall recuse themselves from the bid. They shall announce whatever relationship they have, recuse themselves from the bid. And if they don't, they are subject to the penalties of law.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I know
that
what
cover
they're-
it?
Yeah, I mean, that's, honestly, that's very close to what we did, but he came back with this, and we can go back with it. I mean, here's the thing, intent is what we're talking about. That kind of a statement is the exact same intent as this. So maybe we go back to the simplification.
Yes.
Yes, David and then Barbara.
I think we kind of suffer over the long term in gravitating toward certain small list of favorites.
Yeah,
Now, that list of favorites, it may be perfectly reasonable. They do excellent work. They give excellent prices. How you're gonna find out if there are other less stellar reasons, I don't know. Are
exactly.
there other quid pro quos? Are there other benefits that we don't see?
I know, and we can't, how do we
You would
can't
hope
see
people would
those.
be honest.
Barbara,
You would hope. I mean, we do a lot of bidding in here, and I hate when it comes to only one bid brought to the table, because nobody can say anybody uses the same person for a reason, where I hope that the people that are doing our dealings are very ethical people and honest people. But I wanna get back to one other thing that was brought up. Any paid employee of UCO or WPRF should not be allowed, I don't care if they live here or not, on a committee to vote if it's gonna satisfy their interest. In other words, if somebody lives here and let's say WPRF says, oh, we have to hire somebody. And they're sitting on a committee and they say, that's a good idea, then they apply for the job. That intent, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to stop any paid employee from voting, and that stops a lot of problems.
right, we should say that, right, well, I'll add
Let's
that.
simplify this wording.
Yeah, can vote, exactly, someone said, for example, with somebody like Seacrest, and if people are on committees, so many people, how can you find a committee that does not have someone who's doing business with
No,
Seacrest
you
through
can't.
the association? You can't.
85% of this village is
Right.
Seacrest, but that's okay. But the person bringing it to the table
Have to
should come with
disclose.
more than one bid to show, I'm not favoring Marilyn, I'm gonna bring Jackie to the table too.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the problem I've always had with the way they do things.
Right,
Agreed.
It's
Yeah.
only a matter of CYA-ing yourself,
Right.
whoever brings it to the
well,
table.
if we use this, idea that people have to, it's really disclose and not vote. It's
Right.
only, that's all
That's
this
it,
is about.
disclose and not vote.
Disclose it, you can discuss, you can contribute, whatever you want, you just can't vote. I mean, that's what we're saying in 4,000 words here.
This is
Then
good
let's
because
simplify it.
very deep in 718. And of course, this is association rule, but a board member
Yeah.
is constrained to vote unless he has a conflict of interest, and so states
Yeah.
the conflict of interest. And that's kind of where you're going here.
Right.
We wanna make sure Rod's happy with a rule that says a unit owner may not vote, and here's the reason. Conflict of
Okay,
interest.
yeah,
We don't want somebody to say, whoa, I'm a shareholder here, don't tell me I can't vote. Well, yeah, I'm telling Donald he can't vote because he deals with these vendors all the time.
He's also a paid employee.
And he's a paid employee, but gee, he's a unit owner.
right, that,
We gotta cover it, this is the worst case,
Yeah.
perfect storm.
and you can imagine what he's gonna say. I mean, he's gonna say, look, the law says, that you can't limit them, so.
maybe he doesn't wanna get paid.
Hi, Joy, how are you?
That's the lack.
we had that conflict once where the person who brought in a company here for security, and it was the ambulance company, and he was affiliated with them,
Milton
but
Cohen.
he came up and said, I was,
He disclosed it,
he never
and he
voted,
couldn't vote.
and it, even though the company we didn't accept the company, but he at least, he did what he was supposed to do. The committee did what it's supposed to do, it took everything that he said, even though he was biased about it, but he at least was upfront, and then we chose the company that we chose. So it does happen,
But you had many bids, Herb.
yeah, we had,
And that's, not to dwell on it, that's where it comes
that's the
down to,
key.
is the bids. If I favor Jackie's company, they might be the best, but isn't it, if I keep giving her the business and the business, you should be bringing another person in.
We had 11 companies come in here.
Okay, so I'll rewrite this and send it to Rod, we'll send it to Rod and, you know,
Excuse me
he can
for
let
one
us know,
second,
because
Anita.
essentially that's all it
Excuse
says.
me for 1 second. David, do we have to send every word to Rod? This must be costing us a fortune.
I think if you're changing something, you need to let him chop, and probably on the final document.
This seems to be something that can wait till the end.
Yes, just so you mark, these are the changes, use the standard strike through, underline, blah, blah, blah.
Because we're not changing,
Actually, the costs on this project
We're
have
not
not
changing
been
the
that
intent,
high.
we're just
Right,
changing
the
the
intent
wording.
and the premise.
very good.
We're just simplifying the wording,
Yeah, I
not
mean, we're not
changing the intent.
changing, well, there is that big question though that Dave raised. If the person is a unit owner, can we tell them they can't vote? Because, you know,
Right,
you do business.
Just to get that information for the amount that Rod is charging us, like David said, is so
Okay.
minute for the importance of this bylaw to
Okay.
be done right.
So we will send it to Rod just to be
I
sure, okay. All right, let's keep going. These were the changes that we made. I had asked everybody to do a full bylaw review, which you did, and to come in with, and we had some assignments. Check for this term, check for that, make sure this is right. And we came up with a list. We're on the minutes, actually, we're still on the minutes, the second page of the minutes. The new definition of members proposed by the UCO attorney was voted unanimously, and you see it here, we went over that. The point is that we wanted members to comply with the bylaws and rules and regulations of UCO. Membership equals, ownership equals membership. So that's in there. Good and welfare was changed to replace changed to be replaced by good of the order. We looked that up in Robert's rules. What else? These are really minor. Strike delegates and other members, voting interest. We had to change that because now we're going to have one vote per unit. So what we said is voting interest shall mean the votes assigned to each delegate on behalf of the condominium association he or she represents. The members of UCO do not have an individual voting interest, this is Rod's language. And we added, unless as designated by the joint natural person record title holders of their condominium housing units as the one member of the unit eligible to vote in the election of UCO officers. Does that make sense?
Oh, this is future proofing the
Yeah.
document.
Yes, that's what this was all about.
Yeah.
Making sure that because we were doing one unit, one vote, it would fit. Okay. Let me see. Delegate assembly, a delegate or seated alternate delegate may be removed. We left that language out. I don't remember the reason now, but we all agreed to it. we can go back if you want to, but let's finish up the minutes first. Article 4H, delegate voting abstention, this is important. Current bylaws say abstention counts in favor of a vote,
It's a non-vote.
unless there is a declared conflict. Robert's rule says abstentions is a non-vote,
That's right.
and we voted
is a
to count
non-vote.
abstention as a non-vote.
Non-vote, yeah,
That's exactly.
definitely.
Everybody comfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
that's good.
interesting, there,
That's good.
this goes back to Magna Carta.
Good.
There's a phrase,
We worked on that too, didn't we?
he who remains silent
I would think he would say
is
that.
deemed to consent.
No law.
This is common law back 1,000 years.
Yeah,
So we wanna make sure we wanna say what we wanna say.
This
right.
is good, I think.
And I think what we wanted to say was that it would just count as a non-vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Changes the total.
And
It's a non-vote,
disagreement? Okay.
non-vote, definitely.
All right, election of UCO officers, there was just we took out when approved by the delegate assembly executive board elections committee, because there were too many, it's just a typo. And we, to say that members may vote by electronic voting system, by proxy, by absentee ballot, or in person. We kept that in, if we go to one vote, one unit,
Then it
are we going to do absentee ballots?
Well,
We're gonna have to?
Should if you're gonna do one vote.
It's quote, our company, we can do anything that's legal.
Oh, okay.
That's legal.
The federal government accepts absentee ballots, the county accepts absentee ballots.
Do we
Why
want
not?
to, is the
Why
question.
not us?
Yeah.
As long as we build in the security protocols,
Right.
why not?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't a snowbird
That's true.
be able
Have the
to?
right to vote, yeah.
And maybe you're gonna say, I mean, in the army, I had to have it notarized.
Yeah.
And I had actually filled out that federal ballot,
Yeah,
Well, that can be done when
That can
this
all-
committee is
can all
formed.
be done,
yeah,
can all be
Right.
done.
okay,
Can I ask a question at this point? Have we settled how we are going to let people or give them the opportunity to vote, how we're gonna notify them? There are different ways here.
We're not up to
Okay.
that.
Now,
I don't think it's
Have we
settled.
voted on
now,
one,
yes,
one vote per
I just wanna
unit?
throw something
When did
out
we
here.
vote on that?
Okay, every
I
year,
only missed one
the
meeting.
management companies
Yeah.
send to the buildings, okay? The new statements or whatever, how much
Notice,
it's gonna
meeting
cost, the
notices.
notices. At that particular time,
Of course,
would it be possible to give people the voting information and let them vote at that time? It wouldn't cost us anything
Oh, for what?
except an additional notice or letter within that parameter.
as long as the ballot is known, sure.
Yes,
yeah,
okay?
yeah, that's what we do with the
That would
associations,
simplify everything.
right,
Anita,
A lot of associations, mine included, we do a straw poll prior to the election. We punch up
Right,
a straw poll ballot, so that delegate theoretically knows how he or she is
how
supposed to
people,
vote.
oh, right, exactly, yeah, that's right, okay.
I
Mary,
only missed one meeting, but did I miss something? Did we decide on one vote per unit?
yes,
we did,
yes.
But
When was that?
how do we get, the question, the problem is, how do we get these people? It says either by proxy, by absentee or whatever. By
When did we
having the
vote one
maintenance,
unit per-
excuse me, wait a
Months ago.
second, by
Yeah,
having the
no, yeah,
maintenance
yeah.
company
Huh?
do it, everybody
Hold
gets
on.
notified.
they have
That's
to be.
news to me.
Wherever they are, they get notified.
That's right. I mean, they've got a good method, you know, Seacrest and the other people who do this, the other management companies. It works. Who was next? Was it, who? Barbara and then.
I think what you have to do is, we're making these rules, you know, the electronic and this and that. But I think when you get this one vote per unit committee together,
Yeah.
they are going to have to decide what the perimeters are. And that's what you should think about.
I'm making that suggestion to make it easy.
Right,
Sure.
Yeah, but it should be brought to them.
Put
Right.
it into your head now. I
Yeah,
don't go to those other meetings.
okay.
we're just, we're
We're
just,
not the ones gonna do that.
but we're jumping ahead because it hasn't been approved by the delegates, nobody,
Well, this is what I just asked.
this is, all we're doing is
was on-
submitting,
Oh, okay, Marilyn, I get your question.
we're submitting it, when,
What we
nobody
did-
approved it.
What we did.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, yeah, what we did was approve that it be put into our draft, right?
Okay,
And then when we finished our draft,
then we'd go
we
back
went
to.
back and checked every statement about voting to make sure it complied with that. That's where this
Right.
exercise came
And,
from.
and if it's voted down, we just pluck it,
Right.
pull it right out.
And then change
And as
everything
far-
else we had
Yeah.
to change
Right.
back.
And
That's
as
why
far
it
as
should
the
be
straw
voted
poll,
before we do all these.
we do it in building A, just like you do. But one year, the delegates said, I don't care, and they voted it the way they wanted
And
to.
that happens all the time.
And that happens all the time, so it looks good that we're doing it, but does it really happen? We don't know.
Okay, so let's go forward. Those were the only things, there's more coming up because we had another exercise, but for the minutes, we reviewed the UCO attorney's recommendations on the legality of the vetted petitions. We had submitted 8 to Rod. And I think you actually have that in your packet, what he said. We're gonna go over it later, but petition 1 on quorum and voting that removes executive board decision on a vote when there is no quorum is a policy decision, not a legal one. We can submit this for vote. Whether we think it's a good idea is a whole total different issue. Petition 2, a petition to be addressed in 30 days that bypasses the executive board is problematic. He thinks it's not a good idea,
Not a
we'll
good
talk about
idea.
that. He thinks that, well, let's wait till we get to it. Petition 3, requiring just cause to deny committee membership is problematic. Does this mean that any unit owner who wants to serve on a committee must be allowed to do so even if 100 people apply? So that's a problematic one. Petition 4, that all proposals for non-budgeted items shall be approved by delegates is a policy decision. It's okay to vote. I think it's kind of a nightmare if we do that, but it is okay to vote process this because it's legal. Petition 5, that officers shall not vote on any proposal on more than one committee. That's a policy decision. It's okay to submit it for vote. Petition 6, requiring a delegate approval of any contract in excess of $1,000 is a policy decision. It's okay to vote. Petition 7, ombudsman, problematic. The ombudsman cannot have an executive function and overrule an officer's decision. That's a no. So we can't do that one. And petition 8 on removal of officers by a 2/3 vote of the delegate assembly. I believe the proposal for 2/3 vote in union petition violates chapter 617. Problematic. So I think we had 4 and 4 that can go forward and 4 that we think should not.
Just for clarity, this is still, since the new set of bylaws has not been approved, this is still directed at modification of the 2013 bylaws?
Yes,
Okay,
2/3, we based it off
because
2013.
conceivably, if you're gonna do all these town halls and information sharing, you could infuse them. We've gone back and forth on this, you could infuse them into the new
Yeah,
packet,
well, we can vote on that. That's one thing we can do today, actually.
save a step.
Save a step, put it in the packet and let people do it. Yes, that's a good idea. We identified questions that we said that we would hold off on, but voting without quorum should be, we be wary of reducing the role of the executive board. If we voted to say that if there's no quorum, the executive board vote holds. That if one of these petitions goes forward and says that the executive board vote does not count, then we're reducing the role of the executive board. I personally worry about that.
I think that this one, it came forward with all good intent. But imagine how small, I mean, something could happen and there's 10 people at delegate assembly. We're
Yeah,
gonna pass something. You can't allow that.
right, right,
To abandon quorum, you might as well abandon
right,
Robert's rules and just
right.
kind
Agreed.
of a free-for-all. I understand the motivation to keep business moving. You can't hold things up forever. That's why I'm concerned about taking away the executive board privilege.
Absolutely.
Now, I will say this, how many times really has delegate assembly been without quorum? You can count it on one hand,
Right,
right?
right.
But it just happened.
Yeah, it just happened,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I understand.
So,
It happens at least once a year.
right, so the fact is that if you dilute the executive board, it becomes a mute board. If they have no power to do anything,
That's my issue.
it-
That's
why
my
have it?
issue, yeah.
Here's the same argument I just made can apply to executive board. You're talking about 28 people,
Mhm.
okay? So 15 people there could pass something and there's no quorum at the next step. Well,
It's
geez,
law.
it's the same situation.
Exactly.
15 people
It's law.
have just voted
Right,
something that impacts the whole village.
exactly,
right.
exactly. Barbara,
Okay.
go ahead and
The
I'll come to you,
bottom
Joy,
line-
after.
The bottom line is, the delegates who voted for the officers also voted for your executive board.
It's an elected
So
position.
if those people are not there, the delegates, we don't have a quorum, then these are people that were elected
Elected.
by the people.
That's right.
So their decisions should stand, otherwise why have an executive board? It would
Exactly.
be useless.
Right, go ahead,
Essentially, I agree with what
hold on,
Barbara said.
hold on.
People are elected, 10
Excuse me, I thought I was
Oh,
called
yeah,
on
yeah,
next.
yes, hold on, please,
Okay.
we're gonna get to everybody.
Yeah, I agree with what Barbara is saying. They are elected at the same time as you have your general elections. They stand for election, they have to give their qualifications, and the people vote on them, and they get as much attention as the other officers do. Therefore, their vote should always count and be counted, and that, I agree with what Barbara said.
Okay, Marilyn and then Olga.
I certainly don't wanna see 15 people on the executive board make a decision for this whole village, and that's what you're saying. Just because we may have voted them on the executive board, doesn't mean that we want them to make a decision that's going to affect every one of us.
Right,
It's
exactly.
much, my
Hold on.
feeling is,
Yeah, that's right.
my feeling is it's much too small a group. Let's bring it to the delegates, and if we don't have a quorum this month, we'll bring it back next month. Let's be realistic.
Olga's next.
Yes,
And then
20
me.
people are elected, 10 people are chosen by the president,
Well,
correct?
up to 8.
no,
I'll tell you.
Right now.
And we're trying to reduce that to 4.
That's
10 at a
right.
time, 10 or alternate, 10 every alternate year, but another 10 are chosen
8.
by the president.
we've changed it to 4.
4?
Yes.
It's in 2013,
One
it's
at a
8.
time.
Okay.
And it, as a committee,
Okay.
we said we would limit the president to 4 appointments. Go ahead.
I just wanna get back to Marilyn about the executive board. The executive board sometimes will both say yes, and when it gets to delegate assembly, they make the no vote, that's what carries, okay, Marilyn? But what is the purpose of having an executive board if their decision won't count when you don't have a quorum?
What do they do?
The point is, again,
No,
you're
she's
coming,
saying it shouldn't.
you're coming to 15 people making a decision for everybody. Stop and
Right.
think about
Well,
that.
one delegate can make a
Yeah, that's
decision for
right,
how many
that's right.
people,
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Right.
Hold on.
42,
Hold on,
You have,
42.
hold on, I'm gonna call on
you
Joy.
have how many delegates now required for a quorum, 115 is it?
117.
117, so 117 people are voting for 7,000 people or 15,000 people.
Thank you, that's what I'm
That's
getting
better
at.
than
So
15.
consider the
The
numbers the same
ratio,
way.
yeah.
Otherwise, you take away the power of the executive board altogether, and what's the point of having it?
Right,
Yeah, you
I
have
do
no
think
fire
that
left.
down the road, we need to talk about the executive board and what its power should be. And if we should beef it up, if we should leave it alone, whatever. Herb, and then we're gonna move on.
I think Marcia
Oh,
would
go ahead, sorry, Marcia.
First of all, you can't take away the power of the executive board.
Right.
And it's up to the delegates, if they don't want the executive board to vote for them, it's up to them to make sure they're there to vote.
That's right,
Good point.
100% right.
Good point, good point, go ahead.
And the fact is that what happened just recently was on a contract that had to be done. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it because we had already gone 30 days over, and now with 30 more, you can't on contracts, you have to fulfill your obligations. That I understand the executive board has great authority on, and that's fine. Now, if we do, let's say there's no quorum, and we're talking about issues other than contractual, I tend to agree that 15, 20 people, but there, you can still vote, still accept, but you can bring it back if the delegates feel that we overstepped our bounds, they wanna bring it back up, they can.
Yeah, there's something in here that we put, quorum and voting, wait a minute. Yeah, okay, it's just a simple, quorum, yeah.
Never happened.
Right,
Anita, may I just ask Dan a
Yes, hold on,
question?
let me just look at one thing. I thought we had added something, I don't see it, that just, the affirmative vote of a majority of the executive board members present shall be considered the decision of the executive board, and that's not what it is, it's shall be considered the decision of the delegate assembly.
Right.
Unless a different vote is required by the act, applicable law, the articles of incorporation, or these bylaws, as any of the foregoing may be amended from time to time. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
David, has it ever happened that the executive board made a decision which stood because we didn't have a quorum?
Yes.
Sure,
It has happened,
not that often.
but it is rare.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't remember it
I don't
happening.
remember it
something.
You don't remember either, Jackie?
I was on, yeah.
There's a very important point. And I think you covered it. There are certain decisions that are specifically designated to go to the delegate
delegates.
assembly. Immaterial of how the executive board votes. Budget
Yes, yes,
specifically states that the
Yeah.
budget shall
That's
be
the only
approved,
thing.
Right.
shall be presented to the
Budget.
delegate
Delegate
assembly
assembly.
Yeah.
for
Exactly.
their
You're
approval
right.
or not.
sure, sure.
This issue of contracts is tricky. I'm almost glad there was no quorum. Because how did you expect the delegates to make a decision on nearly $1 million contract without having seen the other bids, without having a period of education? How can you throw a contract for the first time in front of the delegates and say, hey, it's essentially a take it or leave it vote.
It is.
And if I'm a delegate, an independent delegate from my building, hey, no, you can't do that. But what were the other bids? What was the statement of work? Do they compare? And we have to think about that on these big contracts that we bring to the delegates.
Right. Is there, for example, so what happens now? In a case like that,
It was
would you,
approved by the executive board.
right,
Contract is approved.
that was the deal, okay, right. Good point. How do, should we be addressing that?
This thing you bring up, it's a good idea to bring what I call major contracts. I think the $1,000 number
Too low?
is really
No, it's
too
not.
small. You have
That's
no
mundane,
idea
everyday.
how many small contracts come through here. To hold them up,
You can't.
it'd be a real problem. So maybe you wanna think about a bigger number there.
Well, the bid committee has a number that we use,
Exactly.
and that should be
Yeah,
the number that we.
But the bid committee can always meet if someone, I'm sorry, Jackie, just answering
One
it.
for the day.
If someone's doing something, they want you to meet in 2 weeks, they can call an emergency meeting.
Correct.
You can't do this with delegate assembly and the
No,
executive
but I'm
board.
talking
You
about
can't
the
do that.
the dollar amount, $1,000 is ridiculous. I mean,
That's
Well,
So you have to-
we're not gonna talk about those now, we'll get to them.
later.
Let's just finish what we have to do,
Right.
yes.
To my knowledge, the delegates never see all the contracts, they get they see the budget, maybe not enough time. So maybe you need the delegates vote blindly on many things. So are you gonna put in then in the bylaws that the delegates have to, they should, I mean, I think it should, see the major contracts. We only hear from, and I've been a delegate for a long time, we hear from the bid committee passed it and this committee passed it, and you ask the delegates to vote blindly on a lot of things.
And they don't
So
see
maybe in our bylaws, we need to say something that delegates must see contracts over blah, blah, blah amount.
but that, didn't we have that with cable? They saw Comcast and they saw, they saw them both.
They did see that.
And that's why the vote was so close, it was only an 8-point split.
Well,
But
that's
they
good.
They certainly didn't see both on this Seacrest landscaping.
No, they didn't,
No.
no.
See, that's a big contract.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe you need some language, like a properly informed delegate assembly, some language in there. But that is going to require a lot more work on somebody's part to make sure that information is propagated.
Right. I'm gonna say the negative thing, which is that I assume that everybody can go to the bid committee, that everybody can go to the delegate assembly or the committees where these contracts are discussed. And I know it's not practical,
That's not
but people have to have some responsibility too.
Usually, believe it or not, the bid committee is the most well-informed. How many people can you put in this room? Right? How many people actually watch these boring videos?
Yeah.
They don't. You have to make a positive effort. You need an email block, you need a positive effort to inform
That's right.
delegates.
Outreach.
That's right.
Right, exactly right.
And you also, you can't have it given, even if you had
The
it,
day, right.
both, if you had both contracts, can't give it that Friday and say vote on it. How can they read
Right.
through it and do research? They
It's
can't.
impossible.
Not right.
What's been done?
It shouldn't be though, you know that, Jackie.
So the process should be to make sure that steps are taken to properly inform the delegates before a vote.
Yes.
And those steps should include
Newspaper,
Email.
A properly approved website, which I hope we're moving toward.
That would be good.
Yeah. We
A
need-
summary perhaps
We need
of the bids.
to put a process in place. I think most of your delegates have email, and I like email.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to punch up the address block, for 390 people. It's no big deal, it's just got to be done. It's donkey work.
And that's got the executive board too, because they're making a decision too.
That's correct, yeah.
And
May
I remember the two contracts, weren't they, after they were approved, that they were out in UCO office where people could come in and pick them up?
You're talking about the cable.
Cable.
After, it was after they were approved.
Rest.
We didn't, because people don't see those contracts
And they should.
until they're, I mean, that's in
I
here.
think Anita,
Yes, go ahead.
I have one thing, I mean, people should not be expected to read 15 or 20 page contracts, but if someone does a properly summarized version, a 1-page version, this is what this contract offers, this is what this one offers, and that can go out as a summary. If people have questions after reviewing the summary, then they could look at
Yes.
the details or ask for details.
Yes,
It's a great idea in theory, but
In theory,
the
I know.
person who does the summarizing
Yeah, that's
is
the
going to
problem.
inject their bias.
Yes.
exactly.
Absolutely.
And
That's
you
right.
You
can't,
have to make your own decision by looking
That's-
at
you have
them
to look at it.
individually.
because
Right.
everybody has different eyes.
where is the
Yeah.
place where contracts, I'm assuming bid committee, are discussed and open and anybody can hear what's going on?
Bid committee
That's a
Any
bid-
bid-
and
any-
offices, both.
Any
Both.
place.
But
Okay. So beyond that, executive board and delegates don't have a full picture. So unless they go to meetings,
They have it for
you're
years.
not gonna get it, so, a summary or sending them both out by email. I mean, we have processes already, that information forward, having them in the office for people to pick up. You can have a pre-meeting, I suppose, where they're gone over if they're big enough, but this should be only for major contracts. What have we got, half a dozen?
Maybe we should say over a certain amount, I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead and then Herb.
I will say, the other foot is gonna fall.
Yep.
Something snuck through, and I'm sure you've seen it, that associations of 150 or more must have a website. What you wanna do is read what has to be on that website, you won't believe it. You will not believe the density of information. That law is going to creep
Yeah,
and probably find us eventually,
I see, sure.
and smaller associations. But you'll go crazy populating all the information that the state wants on that website. All of your document changes, all of your governing documents, all sorts of minutes and financial reports, all have to be on that website.
The digital age has come to Century Village, or will eventually. Yeah, so I mean, I think,
And back of you.
oh, go ahead, I just wanna make a comment, I think that we have to be proactive digitally. The issue is going to be educating people who are uncomfortable with computers and don't have an interest, so,
We
but
could-
we've gotta be proactive.
We could meet the requirement with the internet. You could have all the draft contracts, statements of work, bids, they could all be on the website, but the problem is these vendors may become unhappy because
Right.
you're dumping someone else's business
Right,
plan.
That's right.
Right,
Exactly.
so now you're talking
Right.
about password protected websites,
Yeah.
maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. Some of this is a Rod thing.
Wow.
But direct email is probably okay.
Yeah.
You're not violating any vendor's rights.
I'm gonna
Marcia?
say something that maybe a lot of you are not gonna like, but I'm gonna say it anyhow, as I always do. I think part of our problem is we really need a CAM that has more experience. For this type of community, I think we need a CAM that has much more experience than Donald has. And I'll tell you that I'm gonna point out something that happened at another meeting when we were talking about the engineering study. We did not have a certified copy of the old engineering study. And the new one that was coming out did not say that we should it didn't say in the new one that it should be a certified copy. It was left out again. So that's really what I think. I think for a community this size, we need a much more experienced CAM.
Okay, 2 points, one, people can make a mistake and not necessarily be not experienced enough.
I don't think that's the only thing.
and I don't think
it goes-
that's
it
an
goes
issue of
back further,
experience.
but it's not for this committee.
It's
really,
not for this committee.
It's true,
Thank
but
you.
that's
Ladies,
it's
ladies.
true, it's
Thank
not.
you,
Another
I
meeting.
agree. Alright, let's go, the next, yes, Stuart,
According to the Atlantic Broadband contract, when I was going to the Camden Pool all the time, they kept on asking me about that. I came here and I picked up copies of the contract, and I actually went to the pool and handed them out. And I was explaining to them some of the nuances of the contract, and I left them there for people to read. That was perhaps the only way these people really had contact with what was in that contract. And how helpful it was, I don't know, because we never really had a serious discussion about it, but it was put out there. And of course, it's double dosage because the newspaper had it too. And if you don't read what's there, then what can we possibly do? You can't force somebody to open up a book or open up a computer and look at a website.
Try that.
It's
I
really,
agree.
unless you put cartoons out there, I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever.
Joy, did you have something?
Yeah, you also had panel discussions on Channel 63 about the contract, if you remember, you were a part of the panel trying to explain that as well. So
Yeah,
you had three methods, if the people were interested, if they really wanted to know they had to make themselves, look at some of these things and study them too. They depend on their delegates to do it for them.
Right,
And that's what you're gonna run into with the one vote, one per thing.
right, go ahead,
I think
Barbara.
we're getting off the track here, because we're talking about individual contracts, so
Right,
not that it's not helpful, we should get back to what.
Right.
right,
and
cause
let's
we're
ask the
only on
committee-
minutes,
So
we didn't
let
get
us
anywhere.
stop.
Those here
We
who are
better
on
move
on the bid committee to take this issue back to the bid committee and talk about it. To see if there are ways that there could be more communication about contract decisions. Okay, let's go to the committee input on bylaws page, it's in your packet.
need
Before you
to
do
accept the
Anita,
minutes.
are you through with the minutes now?
Oh, yes, let's
What
Voting on
happened
minutes
to the
now.
petition on imposing term limits? It wasn't mentioned at all, and
sorry,
it's
I
on here.
skipped that. Olga and Marilyn had been very, very sure that they had submitted them with signatures. We did not have them.
Right, but have they been vetted at this point?
Yes, so
That's
we allowed them to resubmit it and it was re-vetted and I have it here. So we can vote on it and
Good.
discuss it.
Okay, let's do that.
What
Do
did
we
I
need to vote the minute, accept the minutes?
You don't
Yes,
vote
we
on
do.
minutes, just accept
I mean, do we accept the
Yeah,
minutes?
just accept them.
Hold on a minute. Here's the term limits. I think we'll discuss all of the petitions next. But do I have approval,
Accept
a
the
motion to
minutes.
approve the minutes?
Yes, so moved.
Thank you, and whatever, okay. Committee input on bylaws 41018, you have that page?
Yep.
We
What,
got,
page 18?
yeah, we got down to page 18.
Where am I?
The page
Wait, at
number,
the end, move on,
It's right after the minutes,
after the minutes,
Right
the
after the minutes.
numbers.
and the title is Committee Input on Bylaws.
I haven't
On
got
page
that.
18, did you say?
No,
Oh, you
No.
skipped,
page?
wait
wait a minute,
a minute.
You're talking about committee input by bylaws 410,
this-
18?
What page?
request for opinion on bylaws
What page?
What page are you talking?
with Rod, there's
18?
no number.
No, there's
it's
no
at the
number.
beginning.
Oh, it's in
It
the
just says
beginning.
committee input by,
it's right after the minutes.
Oh, after
right,
the
that's what I
minutes.
said.
Oh, okay.
It says
got it.
41018.
It's an extra
Okay,
page,
page
yeah, I got
Page
it.
18, you see it on the left?
Yeah, I got it.
First page.
Now, when I said page 18, what I meant was that we had gotten through all the items
Right.
up to the page 18 item. I think these are quick, and I think
Could
some
you
of the
do it
questions
right
I
for me, I
raised
don't know where you.
will resolve very quickly. And so, and these
Oh, we're
have to
only on
do,
there?
It's right in the front.
you have it?
Oh,
Next page.
Right after the minute.
Oh, here, because this says draft 18.
No,
Yes.
it starts with page.
Yes.
You have to go to the bylaws too.
okay.
So do you see where I am now?
Yes.
Yes.
Page 18,
Yeah,
Article 7A. It said enumeration of officers. Line
Wait,
4.
wait a minute.
wait a minute.
Marilyn, you're way too far.
No,
You-
she's using both
No,
pages.
I
She
have
wants us
that,
to look at
but
the
I'm
date.
referring
Gotta
to
get to
the,
the 18.
I'm
the
referring
bylaws.
to the
Gotta go to
bylaws,
this.
that's why.
Articles.
I have that here.
And this was a question. Each of the officers, except for the president emeritus, shall be directly elected by a majority vote. Now, we have delegate assembly, should it be eligible voting members who participate in the election? Because we're gonna have one vote. One vote, one unit. Does that change?
But how can we talk about this and vote on it
if we-
if we haven't approved the one vote?
Yeah,
Yeah.
What we are presenting is a set of revised bylaws that is consistent with everything we're proposing.
very
Because we are
confusing.
proposing that we have one unit, one vote.
I
So
realize
that
that,
it
but what
has
if
to be
that's
consistent.
defeated, then we have to come back and change everything
And
again?
I can do that, cause I know what the originals are.
Just pluck it right out.
You know, it would be worse to get it voted and then
have to
say, oh,
change.
never mind,
Better
I've
to
gotta
have it
come
done
back
that way.
and I'll bring it back to you to vote once it's edited.
About something like, in the event that we adopt one vote per unit, the following will apply.
Could
But
Something like
that's-
that.
But that's saying that this is not the bylaw. I mean, it should be stated like a bylaw.
just like a regular bylaw.
I don't know how we can do it before the fact.
It's a package.
You have to do it
Just
before the
remember-
fact.
Well, speak out.
Until this packet passes, these changes, unless you build them in, refer back to the 2013
Right.
bylaws.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And here's the problem, and I know what Marilyn is saying, how can you change everything based on something that we haven't accepted? If we vote on it and don't include all the changes, then everything has to be changed. You know, I mean, the one thing
You can't
we,
do it twice.
It just, I cannot see from somebody who's been involved in this kind of thing for many, many years. I don't understand how you can vote on something if you don't have the right to do it, which is technically this. Why can't we put this aside for the moment and concentrate on voting on that?
why don't,
It's connected
why
to
don't
it.
the delegates have a right to vote on it if it's presented to them as having passed through this
But it
committee, the
wasn't
officers,
passed.
the executive board, passed through for proposal to the delegates?
Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know how you can vote on something that is dependent on whether something passes or
Okay,
doesn't.
hold on a minute. If
Do you
we
agree with me?
want to present any bylaw to the delegates,
Mhm,
it has to go through us, to the
Right.
executive board and the delegates,
mhm.
the officers, the executive board and the
Right.
delegate assembly.
Right, I know all that.
Okay, so what you're saying is you wanna do every bylaw one at a time?
No, but I think that this is something that is major. I mean, we're not talking about should we have, blue paint or red paint. This is something that has been talked about for years. And my feeling is, why don't we, I felt it should have been done a long time ago, but nobody agreed with me other than Olga. But let's vote on that and then we can vote on this.
There are a lot of major changes in these.
I
Yeah.
realize
Bylaws.
that.
Every 3 years.
So you can, I mean, you
So
can,
it's taking us forever.
we could vote on it we could pull out the difficult bylaws.
I think that one in particular affects everything. That one affects everything. It's not like some of the others, it's just a wording issue.
And we could do that, and we could pull it out, but the point was to have a consistent document that we have approved.
Right, I understand that, and you wanna finish, and I understand that, and we won't go into other thoughts that I had on that subject, but at any rate, this is my personal feeling. If you don't agree with me, then fine.
Well, I don't vote on the
No, I
committee, by the
realize
way.
that, I'm the
So
committee.
it's up to the committee, go ahead.
This is what I brought up earlier. Are we talking about change by change modifications to the existing bylaws? Or are we voting to infuse all these changes into this new packet?
We had already voted to do that months ago.
Well-
Now, it doesn't mean we can't reconsider it, but we had voted 2 months ago. Let's put everything that we want and we believe in and that we vote on in the package that goes through the process. Now, we can reconsider that, but let's discuss it. Go ahead.
Oh,
Jackie.
did we not say a few months ago that when we presented this to the delegates and the body, that they would be voting individually? Did we say that, or am I wrong?
We said that we would vote article by article.
Not we, the delegates.
The
Would
delegates
would
would
be
vote
voting
article by
Okay,
article.
Article by
so-
article.
So if they are, this answers the problem. If they're against the one vote, they'll vote against it.
Right,
So we have it in there and they'll vote against it.
that's why she's doing it that way.
That's why,
Right.
Yeah, so there's no problem then.
it's very
Somebody's
easy
telling
at
me
that
something
point,
wrong.
That's me, thank you.
it's easy at that point to take it out. It's harder to put it in after the fact.
You hold it to one side and you can put it back in,
No.
but you're
Why don't
asking
we,
people to vote on something that hasn't even been approved.
No,
We
Well,
never
no,
vote
that's
on
the
something
actual
that's
vote.
approved.
That would be
You know
the
what, we need to
actual
call
vote.
this to a vote.
Okay, let's stop,
Yeah.
let's stop.
Maybe we need to call a vote whether we should, of the body, the members of the committee, whether we wanna leave it in. Or
Okay,
take it
that's a
out.
I
good
thought
point.
we voted for that, but that's.
We
all
did,
right.
I
actually,
think,
we did,
before
this
she
is a
did. We did, we
reconsideration.
wanted it in.
And I think we need to understand the issue and the process for getting this thing approved, cause going through the process is gonna take a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the way it's been set up and that we voted on, and then we can vote to change it. We said we would get everything into the bylaws that as a committee, we thought should be voted on and that we could support, including some of the petitions that came through from Marilyn and Olga and whomever. And we thought, let's get it out of the way, let's get it in there and then let people vote. Okay, that was the way we were going to do it.
Yes.
And
Go
we
ahead.
and we voted on that.
Correct.
We did.
That's correct.
I remember voting on
I
that.
remember
we did.
voting on
The
it.
way you
Those
read
of
it,
us
it
who
would
have been
make it
here
right.
like for a year voted on that.
It's been voted, I think that's the end of it.
Right,
So
Okay.
with input, we could accept the input, but continue on. If you wish.
yeah, I mean, we did vote on it, do we need another vote to vote on it?
No, I
Okay,
don't
let's
No, I
keep
don't
going.
think so.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't
okay, so the language on under enumeration of officers, page 18, says by a majority vote of the membership who participate in the UCO election. All of membership, does not vote in the UCO election. Does membership who participate mean those who have been designated who have voting certificates? Is that what we're talking about?
That's assuming that language,
And it
one
goes-
vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Everything, yeah,
And when that passes, very optimistic. Now you're gonna have to have another group of wise and learned
Right,
write all these rules.
the one vote.
And the phrase that sticks in my mind came from Olga, resident unit owners. You got issues, you have owners who have quitclaimed and deeded this to kids in Connecticut. You're gonna have to deal with that.
but
And it's gonna have to be very specific, because if you say membership equates to ownership, then all those people up north who are on the deed, whatever, get a vote.
right.
You have to
But we've
come up,
already rewritten the bylaw and Rod has reviewed it and
well,
approved
Rod
it.
needs to understand the potential implication,
But I think it's covered.
alright?
That,
Yes, you will need voting certificates.
that's all, that's what we
It's
said.
in there,
doubt
it's
about
all
That
in
voting
there.
certificate will
One,
suffice.
One certificate
per unit.
per
Right,
unit.
one unit, right.
Okay,
That's
hold on.
Not hard to do.
These are the rules that some little body is gonna have to make up.
Okay,
The
Um,
the only problem that they had is when a guy owns 40 units
Right.
and he's renting them, he can only get one vote
That
for the
was brought
unit
up.
That
that
was passed by
that was-
the delegate assembly.
That's right. He has to, that's all he gets is
That's
one.
Page
right,
eleven.
Unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, it's in here, good
page
deal.
11,
Yes, that's.
election
that's-
of officers.
Yeah, it's right in there.
This has been approved
Page 11?
by Rod.
Yeah,
Election of UCO officers, the membership of UCO shall elect UCO officers. Members shall consist of the natural person, record title, unit owner of condominium housing units in Century Village.
That's got to be modified.
Page 11?
Wait a minute,
How many
and
people?
who have otherwise
Page
qualified,
11?
hold on, who have qualified, let me finish.
Oh, here it is, here it is.
In accordance with the requirements set forth in the bylaws and rules, et cetera.
the second.
Oh, here it is,
Each
here it is.
condominium unit shall be entitled to one vote, but the owner of multiple condominium units shall have only
We
one
covered it
vote.
already.
We
Yes,
covered
we
it.
did, yes. yes.
Joint natural person owners of a condominium unit must designate to UCO
Right.
which member shall
Cast,
cast the
right.
one vote of
Self-explanatory.
their unit through a signed voting certificate.
Same as the building
Page 12.
association. No, we went
Fine.
through this whole thing.
Page
12.
12.
This was done.
12, page 12, Olga, 12.
Are you okay?
Yeah, that's,
Are we all alright?
yeah, that answers that question.
Okay,
It's done.
okay,
11 and
good.
Let's
Page
continue.
19.
19.
Again, this is under removal. And my question is, right now, removal goes through an entire process and then it's 2/3 of the delegates. Is that gonna be the same thing when officers are elected by one unit, one vote? Does removal happen by the delegates still? Or does it have to be done by the
unit owners, it would have to be
Is
done by
that
the
true?
unit owners.
Okay, this is under
Right.
recall, right?
Yes,
And the general rule is the people that sent you here
Can take you
are
out.
the
So
only
it's the
people
unit
that
own-
can
right.
take and remove you.
Right.
Exactly.
right, and that is said here, I said that.
That's exactly it.
Same people who elect must remove, so we have to change this,
Yes,
what's in the bylaws. And we have to say, it wouldn't be by 2/3, it would be by a vote of the
Be careful.
the people who
When you're
elected them.
talking about throwing out an elected officer, there's a process, there's a hearing.
Right, we
The
have
Board of
all of that.
Inquiry.
I don't think you wanna make the number required too small, or a
Well,
lot
in
of
here it's
people,
75.
a lot of people are gonna get thrown out. I
Right.
think 2/3 really is the minimum.
I'm not questioning the 2/3, I'm saying it's not of all unit owners, it's not of delegates, is it? Or is it of the people who voted as a one unit, one
All-
vote
Yes,
designate?
That's it.
all those persons for whom the election authority holds voting certificates.
Voting certificate.
that's good.
And that's the answer to it,
Right.
right there, because if
Right,
you
right,
got the
right.
certificate, you've already elected, now if you're gonna, but I do agree, it can't be a simple vote, it has to be there has to be a
Right.
majority.
Right.
It has to go back to the voting people.
In
like
one-
David said.
Yeah,
Goes
in
back
one
to the
place you
vote.
have 2/3, another place you have 75. On the paragraph E
No,
on
it's
page
crossed out.
19.
On 19, it's worth, oh yeah, the bottom.
2/3.
Okay,
75.
No, look at the bottom in
75 is
red.
a lot bigger than, well, no,
Oh,
maybe
yeah, I
not.
see, okay,
It
not
should be
listed.
2/3 there, yeah.
where are you, Marilyn?
19,
Page
last bottom,
19E.
in red,
Is your name Alan?
next to the sentence, oh no, no, my
You need
name
the
is, but I'm
petition
sitting
to
next to you,
recall.
therefore I'm with you.
You're talking
Okay.
about the petition.
And what
to
are you
the-
suggesting?
That was a petition.
Well, you have to decide, it's a 2/3 or it's a
No,
75.
no, the 75 is that can bring it up, and
Right.
it's the 2/3 that,
It's the
vote.
petition that has the 75.
75, you need 75 names to bring the
Okay, to
petition
bring it up.
forward.
Two-thirds
Okay.
vote.
And then you need a 2/3 vote.
Okay,
And now we're saying 2/3 vote of the membership who hold voting certificates,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
I have a question. If we go to one vote per unit, we're talking about 7,000
right.
500 something
854.
Yeah,
Okay.
7,800.
which would be 2/3. Do you think, I mean, I'm just saying, 75 names on a petition is nothing when you
That's
think of 7,000 people. So I could say, well, I don't like you, Marilyn, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna get 75 people. Do you know what the money and the cost of doing that for 75 people? I think that
Right.
number is too low.
You're right.
That's my own
Right.
opinion.
Okay, wait a minute, to the present.
Just for a
Notice was
recall, I'm
held.
talking about. nothing
Notice
else.
must be accompanied by a petition, so we're saying, but the petition, in the bylaws now is delegates.
Right, we're
Is
changing
it
to one per
to-
vote, so
yeah.
if you're gonna go that way, that is not near enough for a
Right,
petition, no
right.
way.
Okay, so it's.
You had 75 for 329 people, now you're gonna give 75 for 7,000, I don't think so.
To do a petition, you have to have, you can't, 2/3 of the, 1 second, 2/3 of the voters for a petition?
No, I didn't say
You're
that.
saying for a vote,
What I'm saying to you is, let's go to petition first,
Yeah.
so we don't get confused.
yeah,
You're saying the way this was worded was based on delegate assembly. You said 75 people on a petition, but delegate assembly, which is 300 and something,
Mhm.
okay?
Right.
Think of that ratio. Now, what I'm trying to say to you is, if you only need 75 names Do you know what that would involve when we have one vote per unit? 2/3 of 7,000 people. That's not a sufficient amount to require on a petition. Do you follow what I'm saying?
The ratio should be.
We're mixing
It's
apples and
equivalent.
oranges.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
hold on a
We're
second, go
mixing
ahead.
apples and oranges here. The
Right.
removal of offices
Talk
has to stay
louder,
with the
please.
delegate assembly, okay, 2/3.
Olga,
The
can you talk a
one
little louder,
vote is a
please?
whole different story. That requires everybody.
No,
You're mixing apples and oranges here.
no, listen to me, Olga, let me just say something. If you get the one vote per unit, everybody votes, right? To put these people in office. Let's take Stu, all right, he's sitting here. They voted Stu in. It was one vote per unit, okay?
That's only once a year.
Well, I'm only talking about that. I'm only talking about for recall. We're talking about removal of an officer.
That's a separate entity.
No, removal of an officer, if Marilyn voted and she's not a delegate, she should be the one to have the right to remove that person because she voted for that person.
If one vote, right.
Here's
Thank
here's a really complicating factor. In the government,
I know what you're gonna say, the Senate, yeah.
the Congress can vote to impeach, and it is not voted by everybody who
Well,
voted.
then we can leave it this way if you want.
If we want, it's up to us, but I'm just throwing that out there to complicate it more, and I believe you said that to me at one point.
Yeah.
But it is a good point. We were just saying that
Right,
in an
that makes
impeachment
sense.
in the government,
Yes.
which is removal, that's done by Congress, it's not voted by everyone who voted
I
for the president.
understand
Is it,
because
but that's not 617, is that what you're saying?
it's something, that's a bit impractical to poll the entire electorate.
Is
I
it
mean, that goes through the
impractical here?
Supreme Court, it's a different deal. I think that's apples and
Okay,
bananas.
so what we are saying here, because the law does say that the people who vote are the people who can remove,
Right,
then now we're saying the petition should be bigger.
it shouldn't be just 75 people.
Yeah, the petition
Not
right now is saying,
75.
yeah,
Oh, you mean
wait one second,
the
To make the
petition?
petition.
for removal.
Yeah.
But the point is that I think you're not reading the rest of the line. It says they can have the petition for 75, after which an inquiry into the charges of the
Right.
Yes.
procedure which follows, which means
Does that
that it
mean
may
they're
not
doing
go
away
any
with the
further.
delegate
That's
assembly?
right.
It may be just a moot question,
Oh.
which has happened when we had the
That's
recall.
right.
Just for
When it
Oh,
got to
this
the
is just for
inquiry,
election?
there
Yeah.
was,
Election.
that threw the
Yeah.
whole thing right out right then and there,
Yeah.
because they didn't have enough to present for the charges, then it couldn't even go any further. So you
Yeah.
get 75 people that are dissidents, they wanna bring, but then you got your whole rest of your delegate assembly voting with a lot more votes, and they say, no, the inquiry didn't answer our questions, we don't wanna go
Right.
forward with it.
Right, I'm gonna go to Stuart and then Dave.
You were suggesting something about the Congress, and I can understand where you're coming from. You're not going to get, as Barbara stated, you're not going to get or have the opportunity, and it's very unwieldy to go to all of the one unit owners who voted for removal. So what you're saying is they put you in office. However, the other organization that has the power to remove would be the delegate assembly. So what you're really doing is saying, we're not going to ask everybody to vote on a removal. We are going to give the power to the delegate assembly. And thus it makes it a lot easier to control and to use than going back to the big group. So if you're going to say 75 signatures and then 2/3 of the delegate assembly is what you're gonna get. And that's the organization that is designated the body to remove an elected official. And if that elected official is removed, who said they cannot run at the next election and be voted in by the one vote per unit, and come back
So
again?
we keep it to delegate assembly, that's perfect then.
That's
Yeah.
right, so you're keeping it in the
And
delegate
removal-
assembly, which makes it a
removal
lot
would be such a
easier to wield.
complicated- do you know how long removal would take in this voting process? It
Oh,
would take
terrible,
months, it
terrible.
would be really bad, go ahead.
Yeah, that's where the 75 came from, on the assumption
That's right,
And
of
the
delegate
delegates,
assembly.
right.
that's right.
That's a good husky number, but it's not a prohibitive number,
Right.
Right,
right? So I'm fine with that.
Okay,
That's fine.
right.
let's
So,
continue.
so all, the mess I caused was just saying, if we go with the one vote, you know, one unit, which we're incorporating into these bylaws, does that change this? And we are saying
No,
No,
right, that's what we're saying.
okay. Does anybody disagree with that?
I just got one question. If the people themselves disagree with it, if the people who one vote says, wait a minute, I want this, I elected him, I wanna be able to say yay or nay.
No.
You may have that problem come down the pike.
but we have that problem.
No, what they do is they designate their
You may have that
voting
problem, but
delegate.
you're gonna complicate things. if
Hold
you
on,
have
one at a
it.
time, okay, one at a time, let's go to Herb, hold on, and then Barbara. Herb, I mean, Stuart, what were you gonna say? Forgive me.
Yes, if you're a voting delegate, certificate and all, and you're not happy, the thing that you do is you get your association to talk to the delegate assembly representative and discuss it with them and convince them to change or to follow you. That
I'm saying, but that-
compartmentalizes everything, and it's still, what you're doing is eliminating the confusion of going back to 8,000 or 7,000 designated voters.
Horrendous.
And you don't want that, you wanna keep it streamlined. The number
We
of
vote.
times this is going to be put into effect
Right,
is minuscule.
Very seldom.
And so, even though I almost think that we're spending more time on something that probably will
Right.
very rarely happen. And if it does happen, we keep it to the 2/3 and the 75 and that's it. And move on to something that's it's more
Okay.
dramatic.
Right.
okay. Although we have to make sure the language is right when
Right
it's
for
in it, or we'll hang ourselves. On page 20, election of officers removal, in the past recall attempt of a treasurer,
Why?
inquiry was separate, I'm on the backside of the committee input doc,
Oh.
the committee input doc that we've been working on.
Oh.
What letter?
Committee input.
I'm on page
20.
20, Article 7E4, it's on the back of the page at the top, at the very top, do you have it, Marilyn? Okay, anyway, the inquiry was a separate meeting, this is not in the bylaws, was a separate meeting, this language isn't, but was at the clubhouse and not a delegate meeting, when there was a board of inquiry. Do you want that in the bylaws? Do you want it to be a delegate assembly, or do you want it,
No, it was,
At a
that
meeting at
was
the
a separate
clubhouse.
meeting,
It was separate.
okay,
it's a
so leave
separate
it.
meeting.
I was the subject of that recall attempt.
No, there was another one.
And it was
Yeah, there were
a
two.
lot more
There was
recent
two.
than that.
There were two.
Yes, Dorothy.
This was,
No, Dorothy
yeah,
was long gone.
right, and it said there was a separate meeting at the clubhouse.
There
It was in.
In the theater.
Right.
Big hall.
Oh, wait a minute, at the clubhouse.
Board
Separate
of
meeting.
Inquiry met in the
Clubhouse.
stage.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
I don't know.
It was
I
on
don't
the
know where-
stage,
You
you're
know
right.
what? It's fine, it's gonna be, yes. So the inquiry itself happens in the delegate, in a separate meeting in the
number two,
clubhouse,
I
got it,
think.
okay.
But it was
sorry.
open to everybody.
Yes, open to everybody. Okay, the next one is easy, we said 2/3 vote of the members
Right.
for removal. Leave of absence, we have Rod's new language. The next one was just, yes,
We just said 2/3 vote of the delegate assembly. The members is the whole electorate, all unit owners,
to remove, we just said it would be the
No,
delegate
no.
assembly.
delegate assembly. You just said 2/3 vote of the members.
No, delegate.
She meant the delegate
Of the
assembly.
Okay, thank you. Whew, thank you. Okay, thanks very much. My head is spinning. It was just in fact, David Boaz, this was yours, page 25, to strike internet and telephony subscribing members.
25.
and that's on,
What are you on page 25, please?
Page five,
Article
number.
7, Article
she
8,
didn't do
G.
that page?
Thank you.
Where are you? I've heard 3 different pages.
Oh, she didn't print the backside in the
Yeah.
I'm sorry, folks, that's why it is.
That's why we can't follow you.
That's why I can't have it, cause you don't have the back page.
No,
Here, bag of towels.
Sorry about that.
So
Okay,
just
so
tell
I'll tell
us
you what
what
it is.
page so we know.
Huh? You have it. Okay, I'm on the back page, and so I will tell you what it's about. It was just something, David Boaz, you remember under the Cable and Broadband Committee, you recommended to strike internet and telephony subscribing. Anybody have a problem with that?
No, in what context?
You have to read it, 'cause I don't have it.
Okay, hold on, I'll go to the bylaws. Page,
3.
hold on,
I don't know, I'm trying to, it's on this page 25, cable and broadband, is that it?
yes.
Okay, 25.
That's what
Twenty-
Cable and broadband.
26.3.
Yes,
No,
25.
really 26.
26.3.
That's possible.
Yeah, try 26, that's cable and broadband. The top.
Cost, yes. Yes, okay. Thank you. Page 3, not page 3, item 3 on page 26.
Okay.
Cost for optional internet and telephony shall be paid, and it originally said, internet and telephony subscribing unit owners. This says, cost for optional internet and telephony shall be paid by unit owners directly to the service provider.
Right,
That's the way it is now.
that's exactly right.
Optional.
You pay for the
That's
phone.
what it is now.
internet
That's what they do now.
Yeah,
It's just
same
in
thing.
here twice, that's why.
That's right, so in other words, if it's optional, then
Right.
whoever is, yeah, okay. So that was easy, we're almost done with these, special events
Just tell us
committee.
what page to look at.
Oh, I'm sorry, page 31,
Thank you.
Article 8, U 5 and 6. Make sure it's there, yeah. Special Events Committee. It was raised that the Veterans 5K Walk and Honor Flight were not UCO,
Right,
was not UCO centric.
right.
Right.
And I think we said that some outsiders are doing those
Yeah,
next
well,
time.
John Gregg is doing the 5K.
So I should take this out.
Yeah,
5
well,
and 6.
we only need 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, is that clear?
It's clear,
Not the honor flight either, right?
but
Right.
No,
Yeah,
No.
5 and 6.
someone else takes
de
care of that.
facto,
Right.
WPRF has gotten its snout into this, somehow CSI got its snout into
Everybody's
this.
in
Well, that's
UCO has in fact sponsored
Right,
and supported
right.
The 5K walk.
the 5K walk run. And when we sponsored it, it was monies directed to the veterans.
Veteran, yes.
Now we're going back and forth.
Oh,
We're
One
gonna
year the
alternate
veterans,
each year.
1 year the 5K
Has that been voted on yet?
Yes,
run.
Has that been agreed to or voted on yet?
yeah, when
I-
John
I-
took,
But that's not a matter of bylaw.
John took the 5K walk as a chair.
Yeah.
And he said that he would alternate because they said more people in this village go to the veterans of building here than the honor
I
flight.
don't
So they
really-
said, we'll go each year to 1 and 1.
I don't really care, but where was this voted on?
Voting on, where was a move voted on?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so nothing's always
No,
voted on.
no, but aside from
I
that,
would
the committee
say-
procedures are not
it's,
voted on.
I would say that to
One at a time.
support that was an administrative decision.
Thank you.
And
That's
right
a
at
good
my
way.
desk, you know,
Administrative decision, I
if the
like that.
officers are unhappy with sponsoring such events,
right.
speak up.
Also, David, there's an insurance issue involved with the 5K
Tony?
walk, if you remember.
It's taken
Yeah.
care of.
Tony
Okay,
sees to that every year.
Right,
And if we don't get that
that's right,
taken care of, it doesn't happen.
that's right.
I don't wanna get into that, but John, we have a committee chair, he
Right.
knows all this, and it's gonna be handled through
So what are we
Tony.
getting involved with?
okay, page 41, please.
Are we gonna cross those two off?
We're crossing it
Yeah,
out,
we did.
unless somebody comes back
What
and
page?
says, we're going to 41 now.
41.
In the bylaws, just reminding you, because we tend to forget from meeting to meeting, we removed item C, under books and records, all the exceptions.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
We voted on that.
Right,
Yep.
Just want you to, so all that list of exceptions is out of there,
right, all the way around next page.
yes.
May I suggest, I don't know what Rod said, that you pretty much stick to statute. 617 is very clear on records. And you're gonna search long and hard to find any exclusion. People's social security numbers, certain things like that are excluded, but 617 on availability of records is very comprehensive. It's real sunshine law stuff.
Okay,
Didn't this go through Ron?
yes, he didn't pick it up.
He didn't say nothing on
He
it,
didn't
right?
pick it up, but it's worth it, because we'll see. And then the final one on this section, which you'll be so happy to know, on housing for older persons, that may be the same thing. We voted to remove, to only do A and B and remove
Right.
all the convoluted language. It's on page 45.
Right,
45 and 46, it goes over.
Yeah.
no,
We cut back to a
45
very
covers it.
simple A and B statement.
That's
Right,
right.
that covers everything.
Right.
That covered everything, but if you want me to, I can have double check with Rod on housing. Just because we did pull those things out, I just want to remind you. So, okay, so that's it, now we're gonna go to petitions quickly.
Yes.
And get them done in a half an hour
Yes.
and we'll be
Yes,
okay.
yes, yes.
Thank you for that, and I'm sorry for all the confusion on the package, et cetera.
Yeah, let me find them.
Do we have the petition?
You do, but at the top of the page, it says Rod Tennyson, March 27. It's in your package.
Rod on petitions.
Where is it in your, you should
Oh,
have.
I see it.
Oh, here it
You have
is. I got it.
I got
There's
it.
no number on the page.
That's no number.
But it says Rod Tennyson near the
Yeah,
I've got it on my computer, Ron.
March
There
23rd.
somewhere.
Yes, it is in the front because we went back.
March 23rd.
I'm sorry, March 27.
March 27, 3 days ago.
Yeah, which it was at that point.
It's
Now,
about the 6th or 7th page.
Yeah, I
does
got
everybody,
it.
did you find it?
Yeah.
Oh, I think
Did
further.
everybody find it?
I have it.
Read more,
Okay.
Everybody got it? Anyone
back
have
to the
it?
6th page.
Yeah, yes. That's the 5th page in. You got it?
I got it.
Okay, we got it. You know what, I'll try to figure out how to number all of these the same. They're all separate documents.
Right.
So we print them separately and put it together. You'd have to get all of it into one document to paginate it, wouldn't
I
you?
got it.
Yeah, and that's like 100 pages.
You're gonna end up in the appropriate subsection of the main bylaw.
Right, but I'm saying to make it easier for us as we go back and forth. All right, this is what we talked about in the minutes. These are Rod's comments on the petitions that were vetted, and I'm going to include one more, which is term limits. We voted when we did the bylaws to include 3 at the time. We adopted 3 of those that were submitted. Electronic signatures, electronic for petitions, electronic voting, and 1 vote, 1 unit. That's why they're all in the draft bylaws, because we voted to say, as we've said many times, it'll make it easier for people. It'll all be in there and they can vote, 1 article at a time on what they want and what they don't.
Correct.
However, because they came through, no, I guess not. People will vote on them when they get the whole bylaws. Is that what we want? Because at one point we said, maybe we should pass them through the officers and the executive board first. And I'm thinking the answer now is no. Go ahead.
We're talking about looking over these here
Yeah,
things.
that we've already voted on.
So our recommendation has to go forward to the officers, so we have to vote on it. We have to give a recommendation, yes or no, right?
We voted, the question is, we already voted and of all of these,
Right.
except term limits, which we will vote today.
Well, that's the one we have to do today.
But what I'm saying is, according to this, we don't put these into the bylaws based on our vote.
No.
No, we have to
No.
wait until it's
Yeah,
approved.
it's gotta be
These have to
approved.
go separate through us, if we say no, it goes to
Has
the
to go to the
officers, then the
officers,
officers have to
the
vote.
executive
Thank
board.
you, right.
Can I say something?
Again,
These were
for
suggestions,
the
not
third
petitions.
time.
Oh, okay, hold
Oh,
on.
wait, suggestions is different than petitions.
They were suggestions, not,
No, but they
You
came
went
in with
fine by
signatures.
Yeah,
yeah, because you asked for it.
Yeah.
Because you asked for it specifically, so we accommodated you. These were originally suggestions for you to consider while you were doing the bylaws, while you were redoing them.
And we voted no,
And in the process, you did accept 3 of them,
right.
okay?
This
The
is
term
good.
limits, you asked for a petition specifically, so we just gave it to you. We wanted to make you happy.
We thought that meant that they were official petitions,
These were not
okay.
no.
Great, if they weren't,
away with the wrong.
if they weren't, then we don't have to do them.
Yeah, right.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Look,
Hold on.
this is what I gave you.
You got a petition.
That's what you
Bylaw
gave me.
suggestions.
But let me show you what Marilyn gave me. She gave me for every single one of those,
A petition.
a petition.
They were petitions with signatures.
So you have to address them
And I
then.
didn't
They
know
were-
what you.
And we addressed them.
Okay, so,
Right,
We're
not
on a
me,
different
her.
planet.
alright,
No,
okay.
I know. They were
No,
petitions.
so-
Once it's a petition, then you gotta take it up. If it's a suggestion,
That's a different
you
story.
don't have to do it.
Excuse me.
Okay, hold on, go ahead.
I am sorry, but we got them all, being said they were petitions.
Correct.
Now, just let me finish, that's what I understood. And we took them apart and we said, these here we accepted, which we put into this writing of the bylaws, and these we didn't accept.
We did not.
So therefore, we have to send them forward as a petition to the officers saying no recommendation. On the ones we accepted, they're fine. The only one we didn't vote on yet is your term limits. And that has to be done this morning, that's all you have to do.
Okay, let's do it first.
Let's get
rid of it. Okay, and yes, and just, here are all, and they were all vetted also.
Right.
Okay.
And we voted on it all.
Let's do
Okay.
term limits.
Okay, you wanna bring up,
David,
somebody wanna bring up term limits?
Again,
Yeah.
if you're accepting these in time as petitions, you are talking about modifications to the 2013
Yes.
bylaw.
Right, which will be
Yes.
done by delegates
If
and
you
we-
accept them as suggestions that we approve, they could be fused right into the new package.
Well, we didn't want.
which
to.
we did, 3 of them.
On 3 only, we don't wanna do the
Okay,
other.
but now we're talking about term limits.
So do they don't have to go?
Either way you wanna do it.
Okay, my vote is don't take them.
Yeah, me too.
But I wanna make sure we're not breaking people's sense of what's legal, go ahead.
These are not insignificant changes. And you have a pack of signatures.
You have
You
to,
can't just throw it out.
no, you have to follow through
So
on
we
it.
have to take it through.
Of course, officers
But you did,
next.
didn't you? On those
Those
three?
suggestions were vetted by
petition.
not. So if they're vetted, we'll just go with what you accepted, the 3.
That's right, what we
Term
accepted
limits
so
and the
far.
story.
So now make a motion.
I'm happy.
But the term limit is a,
I need to read it to you because I
is
think
it a petition, that's all I'm
it
asking.
is
Yeah,
a
it is.
petition.
Yeah, I'll
And we
make a
have to
motion
vote
if you give
on
me a
it.
copy of it.
We are gonna have to do a couple motions, but I have to find the one. Here it is this it? Yeah. Okay. This is the one that came in last week.
That's
No
the only
member-
one we didn't vote on, am I
Right,
correct?
correct.
That's all I'm asking.
Can I make a suggestion quickly before we go through all this? Can I suggest that you just add the term limits in to whatever you're doing with the documents?
No, you.
No, no, we can't.
Yeah, once you vote on it.
Yeah, we
Right.
voted on the other
Oh,
3
yeah.
that we
Okay,
accepted.
let's vote.
Once we vote on it.
Read it.
No member shall hold more than one office at a time, and officers shall be term limited as of the effective date of the amendment, which means they only serve one term.
one term. So that's 2
Read
years
that
only.
again?
Say that
One
again.
term is 2
This
years.
is
No.
what you gave me,
Yeah, all I did was change a word.
right,
In other words, instead of somebody
Right.
being able to run forever.
I'm gonna read you what it said
two-year terms.
before and then what it said after. Here's what's in the 2013 bylaws. No member shall hold more than one office at a time, and no officers shall be term limited.
Right,
That's
that's what we
Okay,
have
now
now.
we're taking that out.
That's, no, we're not doing
No, we're
that.
not
Listen,
taking anything out.
That we have in there now.
Okay,
This
we're
is a new
abandoning it,
petition
yeah.
coming up and we have to vote on it.
No
Okay.
member shall hold more than one office at a time, and officers shall be term limited as of the effective date of the amendment.
But it doesn't say what the limit is.
It just
It
says,
says it in the other rest of it, 2-year terms, it says it, this is just a small part of it. It says it in the rest of it.
Where is
in the
the rest?
bylaw.
Where is that?
Bylaws, it says.
and it's in our
But
bylaws.
if we're gonna vote on it, we need the whole thing.
I just changed in one word.
Okay. This is under officers.
What
So
page?
you're just changing that one part, I
That's all.
understand.
The rest of it, the two-year terms.
I think it's two years,
Hold on,
What page?
two-year
I'm
terms.
looking, I'm looking,
Officers.
let me see,
It's,
hold on, it's under officers, I think is it 4, is it Article 4, I'm not sure, give me a second.
6 in here.
6, is it 6, good,
officer each
Article 6, thanks, Article 6, let's find the page.
But people can't have two jobs. There are people now that have two
Of
jobs.
course.
One is in charge of the paper
The
and
ex
one is
officio,
one is a.
ex officio member.
No, what they
Yeah.
mean
You
is
know.
an officer. I can't be treasurer
Where
and
secretary
treasurer.
Where are you?
16.
Oh, 16.
Okay. I'm looking for terms, right here, okay, B, Article 6, are you on page 14?
Yep.
Okay, I'm on 16, wait a minute.
14.
term,
The term, okay, that's the last sentence.
each of them.
The term, no, these are appointments.
That's the executive board.
No,
you
that's
need to-
that's executive,
That's
we need
officers.
officers,
Here's the-
sorry,
What page?
16, no, that's crossed out. Officers and their duties, page 18.
Page 18.
Um,
Page 18.
Article,
The term of each appointment.
cause under this, it's
All right,
Article 7.
18, Article 7. Article
18, number 7?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Article
Officers
7.
and their duties.
There is no, on page 18,
I
it's
have
A
no
and B.
18.
Where's mine?
Oh, Article
C,
7.
on 18, on
Article
19,
7.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't look at that.
page
Yeah,
19,
on the
term.
bylaws, yeah,
C,
right.
the term, officers shall be elected to two-year terms unless, so forth, is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yes.
19C, that's officers, but what about the delegate assembly?
No, forget about it.
We're not, we don't care about that.
The officers, it's under C, on page 19
C,
now,
that's
we've
more
moved
like
over,
it.
thank you.
You're
The
welcome.
officers, it had said of this association, and we know that UCO's not an association, so we crossed that out. The officers shall be elected to two-year terms unless an officer shall sooner resign or shall be removed or is otherwise disqualified to serve. The 4 vice presidents shall serve two-year staggered terms. That's what it
That's
says.
good,
Right,
that's
so if
fine.
you're having term limits, you have 2 terms and,
This is,
Doesn't say anything about term.
no,
But we don't,
Go
we
ahead.
don't have delegates.
according to this, we
Is that
do
the
not
only thing
have term limits.
No.
right,
Okay,
Mhm.
I just wanna make everybody on the same page. The new one that you're talking about that we're gonna vote on is going to be term limits, am I correct, Olga?
Yes, in other
Okay.
words, two-year term limits.
right,
Okay,
you serve 4 years.
so I'm going to make a motion if we all understand it.
I'll second it.
I didn't make a
Oh.
motion.
She didn't make the motion
Not to accept as, not to recommend this as a,
Term limit.
as a term limit, what do you call it,
Two-year
petition.
term.
I
Okay,
won't
Two-year
second that.
terms.
okay, any
You
second?
can vote yes.
Who-
I will.
I'm
Barbara
making the
and
motion, you
Marilyn.
second it, that's all.
Wait a
Yeah,
minute, what you're saying is you don't want term limits.
Right.
That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Okay, and you
oh,
voted,
no,
you
wait a minute, give me that again then?
Yeah,
Okay, I don't seem.
Do you wanna
okay.
just do it,
You can't vote not to accept
Yeah.
the petition.
No,
Oh.
we don't, not to accept it, whether to, when we send it over to the offices, we say we're in favor or we're not in favor,
Okay.
do we not?
Yes.
The officers shall be elected to two-year terms.
right,
Unless an officer shall resign sooner.
and we are voting on a new petition.
And
that
this is
Olga-
the,
That you can't
is
run.
this the petition?
No,
No, that's
Well, what is
not.
the petition?
I just read it.
Oh, okay, but we didn't hear the rest of it, that was the problem.
The rest of it that was in the bylaws.
Right.
This is, she did not include all of the language that's
Right, okay,
currently
so
exists.
She's adding more language.
she's
so-
adding two-year terms to
No,
that.
that's in there already.
It's in there, it's just,
Oh,
she's saying,
Which page are we on now? We've gone from
Page
14 to
18.
19 to 16?
wait, I got it clear right now.
Okay,
You've already established term limits in
That's what I
here.
thought
Right.
you said.
You've already established,
Yeah,
cause you're saying elected to two-year terms,
That's only
period.
4 years.
That's
No.
4 years, that's,
Right.
that's term limited,
Put that
that's,
in there.
limited.
you've already
That sounds
got
like
it in
term
there.
limits.
It
You're right,
is.
it sounds like
So
term
you don't
limits.
need
David
this,
Boas.
so you don't need this,
this is here already.
it's in here
That
already.
page 19C,
Yes, so you don't
right?
need
We
it.
accept it.
19C?
I never accepted
Yes.
term limits.
In other words, yes, it's already in here,
Right.
two-year terms.
Well, that's what I said, that's
So
why I.
therefore, we do not need this because you've already established basically
Well, you
term
will
limits.
need it in a minute, I'll tell you why.
Right.
You'll need it in a minute. Let me
David
explain
and
to
then
it.
Barbara.
Okay.
This language is fuzzy, all right? May I serve 2 years, sit out 3 years, serve 2 more years, sit out 1 year,
Yes.
serve 2
Yes.
more years,
Yes.
Yes,
ad
That's okay with
infinitum?
me, that would be
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Alright, so
No, that's in the new one.
there has to be
No, I
a
thought
word
that was
like
in there.
capped
continuous,
to
two continuous,
consecutive 2-year terms,
Can-
right?
yeah,
You can't just, you wanna stop,
two consecutive
So
two-year
all you have to
terms.
do then is add the word consecutive in there.
Yeah.
And leave it at that.
Two-year
You could-
consecutive
Wait a
terms.
minute, you could
Read this.
run 4 years
Uh,
and then stay out 1 year and then come back.
Yes, you
No
could,
problem.
yeah,
I don't think anybody's, maybe I'm reading this wrong, can I just read something?
Go ahead.
The officers shall be elected to 2-year terms, stop for a minute. That means,
two-year
no,
terms.
no, two is just to say 2-year terms. When you're elected here as an officer, you're elected for 2 years.
No, you
Well,
elected
he
the
said,
2 years.
just add the word
Hold on,
consecutive.
hold on a minute.
No.
If you read this, I think this is what you're
If you know,
saying.
you know what I'm,
There are no term limits in
thank
this
you,
statement.
that's what I'm telling
There are
you.
no
Yeah,
term
okay.
limits in the
It should say,
bylaws.
it should say
So I'm gonna
two-
read it to you
two-year
again, Barbara's
terms.
right,
two
And-
two-year consecutive
That's right.
terms.
because we have voted several times in the delegate assembly not to impose term limits, and we never did.
Not 2 years.
And that's
Okay.
because this
Thank
language
you.
says, the officer shall be elected to two-year terms, unless an officer whatever. And there is nothing that says anything about
This
limits.
does not cover term limits, what you're putting in is
I'm gonna
the
go to-
term
can I go to
limits,
Term limits, okay, go.
okay?
David,
Barbara's correct.
yes,
yes,
agreed.
C only quantifies the length of the term.
Thank you.
exactly, that's the term,
Okay,
right.
I'd like to amend the motion.
We're not
to
gonna
say-
have a motion.
I thought Barbara just made a motion.
Wait, I have to rescind the motion, okay?
She
Yes.
rescinded.
Here's what
Okay.
I'm gonna say, before you can't do anything yet, hold on, unless I
You're
rescind it.
rescinding
The
it.
motion is on the petition that you're passing in for term limits. And I am saying on my motion that I am not in favor of term limits,
Okay.
period. Now, if you second that?
No.
No, okay.
We are still voting to reject the petition
Right.
to impose.
That's what I'm
term
saying,
limits.
not in
Okay.
favor of
This
it.
is just a vote of the committee,
No,
that's all this
that's all.
is, Louise.
First of all, let me say, the way it's worded here, the way you have it worded, Barbara
We
is
know.
correct. Shall be
I've gotta
elected
leave at
to
12
two-year, basically, this two represents the spelled two. So
Yeah,
what you're
we know
saying is,
that.
Yes,
shall be elected to
everybody.
two-year terms. You have to say two consecutive,
No, that's in the
2-year
petition,
terms.
that's in the petition.
Okay, so we don't have to do anything with this motion.
We have to vote
We
on
either
the
need to vote or
petition.
we need to correct
It
the
needs a
wording.
second.
Right,
You're gonna have to rewrite the motion.
right. Okay, so where are we? We are term limits by Barbara and seconded by her.
No, I don't want term
She
limits.
I'll second.
What do we?
Thank you, Ruth.
She
I
rescinded it.
just said to rescind the first one since we didn't
To
understand it.
rescind.
All I'm saying to you now is on Olga's petition,
Okay,
I
I
am-
know all that.
but they don't. I'm
Yeah.
not in favor of term
Just we're
limits.
repeating and
Now you
repeating.
need a second.
And I'm seconding
And now we can
Barbara's
vote.
motion.
Okay, hold on a minute,
Don't we have
because
to vote
there are
these down?
minutes, hold on.
Yeah.
Who voted, who?
Not in favor is the same thing. We're passing it on to the officers
Barbara's
next.
petition.
Who moved to rescind? Barbara?
Barbara.
And who seconded the rescind? Okay.
No.
We don't even need that on
No, I
there.
rescinded what Henry said.
It's protocol,
even
do I
need
just,
it
you want
on
me to
here.
just forget it?
Forget it.
Forget it.
Forget it.
David,
We don't need a motion, we're just gonna vote on the petition.
Right.
That's what I
Either in
thought.
favor or not in favor.
Of term limits.
Yeah, of term limits, right.
I think you should read, I think you should
Yeah.
read,
It's going to be favor or not. And if
Yes.
we're not in favor, it goes to you guys with a not in favor vote.
okay.
I
How
need
many
to hear
times
the
do we have to
whole
repeat the
petition
petition?
read.
Will you bring in a new petition?
The petition, wait a minute, to impose term limits.
Right.
This is on officers, okay. This is the petition, no member shall hold more than one office at a time, that exists already, and officers shall be term limited as of the effective date of the amendment.
I understand it.
Does everybody understand it?
Yeah.
It means we are placing term limits.
Mm-hmm.
So if you vote yes, you are voting for term limits, if you
Mm-hmm.
vote no, you are voting against
Right.
term limits.
Right. That's it, very simple.
I guess I
That's
would
the opposite.
ask why the length of the acceptable term is not in there.
That's, I agree.
It's an open kind of fuzzy.
Because it was in the original petition, this was,
Okay.
what you're reading is changed. That's why it was in the
Right.
same paragraph. That's the reason it's written this way.
Because that extra information is
Yes.
still gonna be there.
The essence of this petition is to impose term limits.
Yes,
Right.
That's not what
That's
it was
it.
supposed to be though.
what was it supposed to be?
Am I right?
Yes, the essence is to
Yes,
impose terms.
that's what she wants.
That's correct.
Yes, that's what
But
she
it's not
wants.
in there. How can we vote on something so
Okay.
vague?
Let's vote.
It's in the
Vote
original documents.
It's gonna be two-year term.
Jackie's right.
Okay.
Two years.
Yes, you
We're
see,
voting on a petition that is not.
it's too vague. If it's, to me, if it
It's
said
not
vague.
two-year, well, that's how, I can say how I feel. If it said perhaps, if it said two-year terms,
Right,
then you have a limit, but this is so vague.
It says that. in
But it
the
doesn't say what you
Okay.
presented, I don't
We
think.
got
Okay.
it, we've got what it is, let's vote.
yeah.
It is two term, 2 years.
Let's vote, we're voting on as it came in, right? With the assumption that the other language around it in the bylaws stays the same.
Correct.
Okay. So the motion to
Is that, go ahead,
impose term limits on officers.
okay. You're making that motion?
No.
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 I made the motion that I was not in favor of this petition.
And I seconded that motion.
So you vote no, that's all.
Thank you, that's it.
Right.
So you vote no.
Right.
Okay, all right.
I vote, just take a vote,
That's it.
Yes, roll call.
No,
roll
wait a
call.
minute.
yeah.
The way this is written, you should be voting yes.
No.
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 Not that, I'm talking about what she
We're
just talked
voting on the
about.
petition.
You're voting for term limits, that's the bottom line.
Voting for term limits, yes or
Okay.
no?
That's all,
Okay.
that's easy to say. Thank you.
Okay, so just so you know, in favor means, yes, you want term limits. You
And
vote
not in
against,
favor means you don't.
no means you don't. Got it?
Yes.
David Israel,
No,
Ed Black's not here. David Boaz,
No.
Joy Vestal,
No.
Stuart Richland,
Yes.
Barbara Cornish,
No.
Sandra Cooper,
No.
Jackie Carlin,
Yes.
Herb Finkelstein,
Yes.
Louise Warner,
No.
Ruth Dries,
No.
Marilyn Gorodetzer.
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in favor of term limits, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against.
May I ask a question?
Motion does not pass.
Can I ask a question? How did the committee vote?
What
Just
committee?
the committee people?
Herb, I think you're correct. I think the committee members should vote first
The
before the
officers should
officers.
not be
Officers
voting.
are voting for something that they're doing.
Oh,
Right.
that's right. Excuse
The
me.
officers should not be voting.
Hold
No,
on.
but it,
Excuse me.
That's true.
There is no committee, and it's in our bylaws now, 2013, that the officers have a vote on every committee except elections.
That's right.
So you can't change that now in midstream.
Positive incentive they
No.
can vote.
But you can try.
Hold on, this is not the election committee.
I know.
This is not the election committee. And it is in the 2013 bylaws. And it's also in the revised bylaws, it's staying.
Mhm.
The officers do not count for quorum, but they do count for a vote.
Right.
And-
I think it's the other way around.
Right, if we start saying which they can vote on and which not, we're gonna have a problem. And yes, there's some self-interest, but there's a lot of self-interest in a lot of other things
Okay.
they vote on, David.
I think you're right, they do not.
Herb has a point.
I don't have
To
time
me, I
to
think it's a
article
matter
looking.
of protocol. The members of the committee should be called first.
Well, they can be called first,
Yeah.
but we still have to
I
vote.
mean, this is a, no, I did say that.
You're saying how it's called first.
How it's
In
called.
other words, your committee members should be called to vote
Called
first, then the officers
It
should
doesn't
be
change
called.
anything.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, it's gonna be the same thing.
Do you wanna do that? No. Then I just,
No.
I don't
Already
care,
done,
to
you
me,
can
the
look it
vote
I
is the
do
vote.
wanna know how the committee voted.
you didn't hear their votes? You want me
No,
to
no.
tell you what they are?
4 to
The
7.
committee members, I
Okay, that's
forget-
all right. Okay,
forget
I got
the
it.
officers.
David Boaz voted no.
He's an
No,
he's an officer
Oh,
now.
officers.
No,
I just wanna know how the committee
the
voted.
committee,
Not the officers.
you had 3 yes,
Oh, right, I keep,
You had four-
I keep
3
assuming
yes
you're a
and
member
1
of the
no.
committee. I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. So Sandra Cooper voted no.
No,
No,
oh
she's
my
an
God.
officer.
She's an officer. Oh,
Excuse me, can I just,
Officer.
can we make this easy?
It's
You're on the committee,
It's
you're on the
three-
committee, you're on the
three
committee,
yes
there's
and
4
1 no.
people here on the
It's
committee.
3 yes
We
and
don't
1
want-
3
no.
and 2.
Oh, Louise, 2,
Oh,
Yeah,
Two.
she's not an
so
officer.
3 to 2,
Oh, 3 to 2.
okay?
Yeah, the committee voted for.
Okay, 3 to 2.
3 to 2.
Okay.
Stuart,
Just of general interest, if you are paying attention to the news, there is a movement in the Congress of the United States by newly elected members to impose term limits on the House of Representatives and the Senate. And I actually believe that will go forward very strongly down the line. And if we are a reflection of the outside world, we have to consider that.
Do you think we're a reflection of the outside world by now?
all right, now folks, we have 4 minutes.
We are, we're more thinking
We
than most
have-
of the people in the
We have
outside
4
world.
minutes.
But yes, we are a reflection. And I would like to call everybody's attention, if you look in the past, there are some very interesting articles written in the Yuko Reporter in favor of term limits. And if you go back in the old issues, Ed Black wrote a marvelous piece about 8 or 9 years ago, or maybe a little longer, on term limits, and I thought that could be brought out, people could read that just
Sure.
to reflect on
Motion to
his,
adjourn.
because
Sure,
times
and-
have
People
changed.
change their
with
mind.
Items
You
as
all
not.
gonna want term limits,
I
when
don't think he
everybody
changed
here
his
is
mind.
90 degrees, walking like this. You're all gonna say, I
Hold
want
on,
term
don't leave,
limits.
don't leave, I need another comment.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Hold on, please, stop. This was a very complicated meeting, and I'll do my best to simplify going forward. However, we are now saying that the only one that's going to the officers, or we don't, is term
No, it
limits.
all goes to,
It
it
all
goes
goes.
to
It
the
has-
Everything
officers,
goes to
but
the.
we're not in favor of term limits,
So
that's
all of the petitions are going to the officers
Right.
because they came in as petitions, even though the petitioner withdrew them.
We
All the-
talked about
oh,
that
she
a month or
withdrew
two
them.
ago, but I
Wait a
honestly
minute,
don't
Wait a minute, you
remember.
didn't withdraw, she didn't withdraw that.
She said
What?
she didn't
What?
want to go through
We
with them.
talked about that a couple of months ago, but I don't remember.
Alright, stop, everybody stop, just for, please, just for 1 minute.
The same people are gonna vote the same way, so we'll just let it go.
Why should we vote, why should we present a
Let it go.
petition to, that's already been voted down?
Let it go. The same people are gonna
We
vote,
have
no
to.
matter how. This is
Well, the rules state.
It's wrong though.
But excuse me, there is a procedure.
That's
After
correct.
the officers, where does it go?
Executive board.
Thank you, and where does it go from there?
Delegates.
To the
Delegates.
delegates,
The
so why
executive
would you
board,
not
and then it
do
goes
that?
to the
Let it go
delegates.
then.
You should let it go,
You should let it go, even if it goes down.
definitely.
I'm gonna check
You see
that
how
later.
the people
What?
feel.
That's right.
We talked about that a couple of months ago, and I know I looked it up,
We know what it is, we know what it is.
that it does go
Every petition goes through advisory to the officers, to the executive board,
to the
regardless of how they
delegates.
voted,
Yeah,
The
and to
delegates.
the
but it
delegates.
doesn't go with our recommendation, that's.
It does go with our recommendations,
To not, yeah,
yes.
Now, again, what you're doing right now with this petition is modifying the 2013 bylaws,
Correct.
right?
Which we are then gonna propose we
All
change.
those petitions are for two
That's fine.
thousand thirteen bylaws.
Yes.
Absolutely right.
They'll
Any
go
more
through-
questions?
they'll go through the process.
She knows that, right, Olga?
Copy of the 213 bylaws.
It's on the
On the web,
Never
it's
got
on,
a copy.
it's on, okay. All that, it really is up to you, I think, now. If you want us to take this forward, we will.
No, don't take it forward. It's done, I see the way everybody's gonna vote, so let it go. I'm going to see everybody at age 90 coming in here with crutches and
So you don't want it to
wheelchairs
go
and voting.
forward?
It's okay. You guys wanna be here forever? That's fine.
I have died.
Excuse
Let me
me,
take the responsibility.
excuse
Do you
me.
think people will know when to quit?
Excuse me, before you add anything.
They love
She
it.
had people sign that petition, and you submitted the petition to this committee. It is our obligation to follow through on those things regardless.
Go right ahead,
Okay,
you go right ahead.
You know, then you don't put a petition in, the
Jack
go right
Ruby.
ahead.
The executive board will overturn it.
No space.
No, but it goes to the delegates.
Throw in all the other 8.
Well, then you know they don't want it.
okay.
I thought that.
Stuart and David, and then we're done, and we're gonna vote.
Yes, I would like to see this go forward
Thank you.
because it has to follow the procedure that's
Procedure,
already
thank
been
you.
established. But the other thing that I would like to see, or I'd rather like to hear, is the reasons for and against.
Yes.
Not saying, I don't like it, I'm voting against it, I'm for it, I voted for it. I would like reasons,
I can do that.
and I think that's what we have to do, really an honest
That's the
debate
nomination committee,
over
yeah.
this issue because it is a very important issue
Do you
and it will
remember,
be around for a very long
do you
time.
remember that we have voted this down 3 times in
Yes,
the
we
delegate
did.
assembly?
Yes.
3 times and fairly recently,
Yeah.
within the last 5 years.
That's true.
We voted it down, it came up and came up and came up, and we voted it down.
Well, in my impression, a good idea is a good idea and we can kick it around one more time at least.
Go ahead.
Regardless, Barbara is correct, if we voted on that committee, it has to
It
go
has to
through.
follow
We can't be stopped
procedure.
now.
You can't
Yeah,
just.
sure.
There was one time when they did vote term limits.
Yeah,
There
they
was
did.
one time when they did vote.
Really?
for it.
And then it
One out of
So
four.
let-
And then,
I agree
Right.
with Stuart, let it go.
I'm glad you agree with him and not me when I said let it go.
I never agree with you.
So Stuart moves,
She knows.
Do you have something else to do?
you gotta vote. Stuart moves, please, everybody, to process the term limits petition.
I second it.
Barbara
Just the way
seconds.
everything is supposed to go through the various groups.
Right.
Because we want this to be open and very
A lot of
democratic,
transparency.
absolutely.
Okay, David Israel,
Yes.
what?
Ladies,
Doesn't
Okay,
matter.
alright, I'll do it with the non-officers if you want me to do it that way.
Do it that way first. But they still.
Jackie Carlin,
Yes. What am I voting?
Herb,
Go
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Louise,
Yes,
To
you
go
wanted to
to
go
go
through the
to
committee.
the-
Yes, I wanted to go through the committee.
Procedure.
Yes.
Ruth Dries, Marilyn Gorodetzer,
She's not here.
Left.
She left.
that's four, do we have,
Can
that's,
add
that's four, huh? Herb,
I did.
Okay, but you shouldn't put it.
so it goes, I guess, it goes.
Well, we have to take all the votes. All of them, now that
Oh,
you
okay. David,
Yes.
yes?
Yes.
Good for
Yes.
you,
Of
okay.
course I wanna see it go forward.
David Boaz,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Process.
Stuart,
yes,
Barbara,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
got it, done, it goes.
Unanimous.
When do you want us to take this
You
to
have to take it to your office.
the
The
officers?
next
The
meeting.
Next
officers,
meeting.
next delegates,
According to when the
And
meeting's
the
going.
delegate assembly.
No,
There's nothing,
It has
there's
to go in
nothing.
the paper.
Doesn't have to be published in the
Oh,
newsletter
geez,
first.
yes.
Yes, it does.
It can't go to the offices, it
Oh,
has to be
I know.
published in the report.
Are you,
Goes to
uh,
offices,
oh,
though.
really?
It goes into the paper after the
Problem is we don't usually.
After the officers and the executive board vote.
executive board approval.
Oh, yes.
Or not even approve it, it doesn't matter, it goes,
Whatever.
After.
goes all the way through.
Okay.
And I see
right, gotta be adequate.
Yeah, my sister was.
So,
Yeah, I thought you should.
what officers meeting are we going to take this to?
The next one.
Which is when?
Why isn't it this?
May something, no.
But can't you put it in the paper anyway?
No, it's too soon. It has to go to the offices on the executive board
Well, the
before the
officers
delegate.
meeting is Thursday.
Yeah, but then,
And the executive board, so it means it doesn't get in the paper this month, it'll be the following.
That's how it goes.
The June
Okay, then let it go that way.
The June paper comes out at the end of May,
Right,
so it will be, but it will be.
in July paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is it going to be voted on at the next delegate meeting? In
No,
June?
no.
Because I'm not gonna be here, that's all.
You have to wait through the process.
Okay, I'll go to the officers, I'll figure out when the meeting is, and then to the executive board. When you have it?
The procedure, you gotta do it the right way.
It's what?
This is for April.
Yeah.
It's a week Thursday.
We're done. What do you want?
It's a week this Thursday.
David, you know when we put out,
It's
you
got to be
fill
on
out the
the
broadband
17th, I think it's the 17th.
No, it's the week after.
No, the procedures for broadband, they were
Oh,
on
then it
camera.
would be the 24th.
The 24th is the officer.
24th is the officers.
Well, it was, my girlfriend wanted to know, it was
So
No,
just
I don't know
everybody
why
who
operation
wants to
tennis
speak
station.
should be
a
here.
channel.
Because
So I picked up a
no.
packet which talked about the channels for broadband.
But because
But-
Memorial Day is.
Yeah, but then you have the board in the afternoon and the operation in the morning.
Just what we're getting.
Well, Monday.
Channel selection, she's
General
talking about,
selection.
remember we had
I know, but that's
Just
how
like
it
everything
is.
else, Joy.
channels that we
It
were supposed
wasn't
to
the
get.
count of the channel. It wasn't clear, the last two pages.
The wrong date, it
Were
was
not
May
clear.
third,
I mean,
and it was a
Couldn't be
Thursday,
read.
not a Sunday.
Alright,
I don't know if you have them up there again, but
It didn't print clearly.
didn't print well.
Oh, well, that's a different story.
Well, they
Oh,
did, and
well,
I was gonna
We're
go
gonna
on
ask them to
Sunday.
reprint it.
Well, I don't know, because
Ruth,
I found out what she
prefer
wanted, she wanted to go
Thursday,
Scott the tennis
17th.
channel, that was.
Yeah, but that's
But I
not,
think somebody should look to see if something was printed, you
I
know.
guess when they were printed, nobody
Yeah,
looked at the copies and
everything
they
got
just saved them.
screwed
and
up
that was
this
it.
month. Things are
Okay.
wrong. They're
And the
not.
operations meeting
Okay.
should be on the Tuesday.
Ask Rhoda what she